December. I hope that you've had a good week and that you are making some new beginnings through this time of Advent. One of the things that we are all facing right now in South Africa is the threat of stage 6 or even 7 load shedding. Only South Africans know what this is, or maybe there are other countries where such a thing exists. People who've never had it or heard of it have no idea what we're talking about. So just for the sake of those outside South Africa who listen to these talks, I know there are a few, in South Africa, our electricity is cut off for a certain number of hours during the day or the night, supposedly because power stations have not been maintained and they break down, or because of sabotage and greed. That's a very sad one, where people sabotage the machinery or the coal or something like that so that they can get called out to do overtime work, so that they can earn more money. If that rumor is true, I hope those people will have an opportunity to repent of their greed, because that is a shocking, sinful revelation. But whatever the reasons are, we have these moments when our lights are turned off, and yes, they are inconvenient at times. Some people moan and complain the whole time, and it doesn't help. It doesn't change anything. Others do what they can with the lanterns, candles, gas plates, inverters, if you're lucky to own one, or a generator. But I always remind myself that in Jesus' time there was no electricity. So it's not such a terrible thing, except that a lot of our modern day living revolves around the use of appliances and gadgets and things that need electricity to run. So I do understand the frustration, and I have to defrost my fridge more often than I used to. But there can be a positive side to these things. And I mentioned a while back that the idea of having a mission in this parish, way back in September, came from one of those evenings when I was just sitting in the dark and thinking about the parish and where God still wanted to take us, and the idea of having a mission came to me. Now, a novelist called Jeanette Winterson has written something on the value of darkness. It's from Why I Adore the Night. She says, I have noticed that when all the lights are on, people tend to talk about what they are doing, their outer lives. Sitting round in candlelight or firelight, people start to talk about how they are feeling, their inner lives. They speak subjectively, they argue less, and there are longer pauses. To sit alone without any electric light is curiously creative. I have my best ideas at dawn or at nightfall, but not if I switch the lights on. Then I start thinking about projects, deadlines, demands, and the shadows and shapes of the house become objects, not suggestions. Things that need to be done, not a background to thought. End of quote, Jeanette Winterson. Now, I too have noticed that when you do sit with a candle flickering, and if one is not buried in your phone, there can be some very interesting conversation. We've had visitors on a couple of occasions when there's no electricity, and as long as one is prepared, it's very nice to sit with visitors around a table with a couple of flickering candles. The atmosphere is relaxed, and you just talk about all kinds of things, and just like this little article suggests, one looks inwardly. You talk more about your feelings than just about what you are doing and your busy life and all those things, which is not a bad thing to have these quieter moments. What is God saying to you in any moment of your life when you are forced to pause? We do tend to rush around so much that we don't always pause to listen. I was reminded in something that got shared on our community group this week that prayer involves listening as well as speaking. I know that, but it's good to be reminded of it every so often. Because if we fill our days with busyness, technology, deadlines, we never have time to listen. I mentioned last week that Advent is this time of preparation leading up to the celebration of the Messiah's birth. And we begin by celebrating the fact that he is the Lord of Lords and the King of Kings. And then we lead up to celebrating his actual birth. But and then of course at Christmas time we celebrate the fact that he came as a baby. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. But those thoughts go over the tops of our heads if we are occupied most of the day, except for the 7 or 8 hours when we sleep. Maybe that's why God sometimes speaks to us in our dreams, because that's the only time we're quiet. But we've noticed that the shopping centers are getting busy, and you drop into a supermarket to buy some groceries and you end up in a crowd of people. The Christmas aisles in particular, all the decorations and the toy aisles and such places are all very full of people buying and being busy and preparing for Christmas, but in a frenzy. I mentioned that we should remember that there's another focus to Christmas, but this focus will be lost, and none of our endeavors will lead to anything deeply spiritual if we don't find that little moment of quietness. And so I want to suggest that if you are forced through load shedding to spend more time in the dark or even in quiet, you know, when load shedding happens, all the machineries and the gizmos and the things that we all have running in our homes suddenly go very quiet. We don't notice that we live with this noise all the time, but suddenly everything goes very quiet, and then you know that the electricity's gone off. When you have those moments, try to go deep inside and ask God what He's wanting to do in your life. Is there something specific that He lays on your heart? The name of someone in particular that you need to be praying for or reaching out to? Any ideas that you have concerning your church and your faith? All those things God can do when we give Him space, and Advent can be seen, if you like, as a time of putting things on hold for a little bit. I don't want to compare Advent to darkness. It's not a time of darkness by any means, but it's a time for lighting a candle and being quiet and meditating on God's goodness and the great gift that He gave us so long ago, and which we will celebrate in a couple of weeks' time. So let us remember to get our focus straight. I did mention this last week, new beginnings, and let me add to that new moments of enlightenment that come out of quiet and darkness. May God bless us as we think on these things and make room for Him to come to us this Advent and to meet us in the celebration of His birth, the celebration of the birth of His Son at Christmas. Have a great week. Continue to make room for God.